Welcome back to another episode of the Unblock Your BS podcast. Today, we have a fun guest, a dating coach, no less. So many people say they want love, but the moment they start dating again, they either self-abandon, lower their standards, or get stuck in a loop of frustration and overthinking. Sound it all familiar? In this episode, I sat down with dating coach Kam Berard, and y'all, we went in. Kam works primarily with people post-divorce. Yep, that would be me. And helps them rewrite their relationship story, especially if they're curious about non-traditional paths like polyamory. But this isn't just a how to date again episode. This is about getting radically honest with yourself. What energy are you bringing into dating? Are your standards rooted in your values or your wounds? Are you actually available for love, or are you still looking for someone to save you from loneliness? Eesh. Kam and I talk about the differences between attraction and compatibility, how to stop chasing validation on dating apps, and why your dating profile is basically your emotional resume. And yes, we even dive into what polyamory is, because I hadn't really done that much research on it, and she kind of gave me the 101 on what it is. How compersion works. That was a new fun word of the day. I hadn't heard that one before, and she explains what that is and why some of us just aren't wired for a one size fits all kind of love. So this episode is juicy, it's expansive, and full of mic drop moments, as I love to have here on the Unblock Your BS podcast, that will challenge how you see yourself and how you approach relationships, and invite you to love however feels most aligned for you. So let's dive in today with dating coach Kam Berard. Kam, welcome to the Unblock Your BS podcast. Why don't you share who you are and how you help people?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Tara. I love your page and all the advice that you give, and love that we can be in the same space and helping people on their various paths, right? So
Yep.
The way I help people is I work primarily with people post-divorce in that kind of big transition in life. And have more on TikTok found the niche of helping those looking to get into the non-traditional relationship space and kind of exploring things like polyamory and just any other new relationship dynamics, even within existing relationships that they have, or with new ones that they are now looking for in that second stage of life.
Beautiful. Awesome. So what led you to starting to create a service of being a dating coach or relationship coach?
All my friends coming to me in the first place. I think a lot of people start there probably. But no, it was honestly seeing everybody's stories on TikTok about how miserable everyone is in the dating scene. And we all have to go through those hard learning curves when you haven't dated in a long time, particularly if you were never around to experience online dating as it exists today, the last time that you might have dated.
MySpace was around when I was in the dating world before my marriage. So that's how long it's been.
Right. So I just saw all these people, young, middle-aged, older as well, like just really struggling to find any sort of enjoyment in the dating process. And I had felt that after a little bit of time getting my feet wet again, dating after my divorce, I had built my professional career prior to that in strategy. And so I applied it to my dating life, and lo and behold, it helped. I had great dates. I had great first dates. Did they all turn into relationships or true romantic connections? No, but I walked away from each of those dates saying, I'm really glad I met this person. I had a great time. It was not a waste of my time. It was a valuable experience. I know more about what I want. I know more about my boundaries or boundaries that maybe I should have. And I had a great time. I met someone new. I got to learn something new. And I thought that was what dating should be. I thought you should really relish in the dating experience on the way to finding your needle in the haystack, because finding love is not an easy thing to do, right? It doesn't just happen. It is a hard process. It is a long process. And then, yes, when it does happen, of course, a lot of times it does feel easy then. Because by contrast, of course, all those feelings can feel like a breath of fresh air, like, oh, it was always supposed to be this easy, right?
Yeah.
But it could still be enjoyable on the way there. And then my whole mindset was that if I'm enjoying the dating process, if I am showing up to every date optimistic and energetic and in a good vibration,
Yeah.
um, that is attractive. That
Yes.
will attract just about anyone. But if I'm showing up pessimistic to dates, saying, oh, what's going to be wrong with this one? You know, is this going to be a waste of my time? I'm already looking at my clock, trying to think about all the other things I need to do. That's not a good energy to be putting out. So even if you did meet Mr. or Mrs. Right, um, you may not be what they're looking for in that space, right? So I try to coach my clients to get into that positive mindset of dating, so that they can relish every vibe on the way to that connection, and show up to each date optimistic and happy and energetic and positive, and just knowing that it's going to be a good date because they've done all the work on the front end to qualify that match, to know
Yeah.
that they're going to be able to have meaningful discussions and conversations on that date. It's not going to be the same 20 questions of small talk that
Mhm.
so many people resign themselves to. It's going to be interesting. So they know that they can enjoy the date that they're on because they've done the work to know that this person is worth meeting, right? This person is worth going out on a date with. And then whether there's a true connection or not, again, it's not a waste of time. It's a valuable, good experience, a positive experience. It leaves you, okay, that one was really close, but I just didn't feel it in this category, or
Yep.
we're not aligned here, right? And you just optimistically move on to the next at that point, instead of like, okay, got to go back to the doom scrolling.
So why do you think that people have such a pessimistic, low energy when it comes to dating, even on dating apps? Because I'll see that too in prompts where it's like, I don't want this, and if you're this, and swipe left, and it's like it's super. You can tell they're jaded by the process, and even if everything else is amazing, the fact that they're jaded by the whole process isn't attractive. So why do you think just societally our labeling of dating is such a dumpster fire?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's because as a society, we're a very commercialized society, wanting that instant gratification. We've been
Yep.
able to get it. And dating apps, they are a necessary evil, and they have some profound positives to them. But one of the bigger negatives is that people always know that there's another one out there. There's another one out there. I can keep
Yeah.
scrolling, you know? And so people are very quick to give up on people in general.
Yep.
And then they become so jaded because they feel like they've gotten high maintenance on their selections because they've got everyone to choose from now.
Yeah.
And they feel the people that they're meeting has too high a standard as well, because they also have hundreds, thousands of options, right?
Yeah.
So everyone gets a little resigned to the fact that we're all just going through the motions, and nothing can be an authentic, genuine experience anymore. And so I really work with my clients, and this is what I did myself too, is just working to connect with someone, you know, and putting in the additional work. I would so much rather put in the additional legwork on the front end before getting too invested in going on dates with someone that I didn't know was going to be worth it. And so yeah, they give up and they get lazy, and they don't think of their dating profile like the personal resume that they should be. So one of my first criterias, as far as my strategy went, was that if somebody didn't have their prompts entirely filled out with all
Yes,
the
ma'am.
characters available to them, like string some full complete sentences together for me, please. Use punctuation.
Pineapple
That
on
would be
pizza.
great. Yeah. Like, be original with some of the information you're sharing. You know, by all means, be witty if you are. um, but don't be generic. And I want to learn more than you speak fluent sarcasm and don't want somebody that doesn't take life too seriously.
Right.
Like, it was just that's every profile, right? And so my clients, tend to, when we go over and we build their profiles together, and I'm challenging them to really think about this, they're like, well, can't I just, crack a joke about going hunting on the weekends? I'm like, no, you
Unless you
cannot.
actually plan on doing that,
Yes. And it's like, you have to think about what you're trying to attract.
Yes.
Right. I always joke that most men on dating apps act as though they're trying to attract other men, like as far as buddies go.
So
right.
true.
Like, I go fishing. I like play baseball. I golf. Okay. This is,
Yeah, bro.
so as a woman, you're telling me you're never going to be home.
Yep. I play
And
video games. Like, oh,
yeah.
great. Yay.
So yeah, we have to think about what we want to attract to us, and not just what is attractive to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Like, they may think that the fact that they caught a giant fish is attractive, but do women find that attractive? Maybe the woman that they are trying to attract does. But I could go on a whole TED talk about fish pictures that we probably don't have time for today.
Right. Well, and then they want to complain that it's like their height as the reason why they're not getting matches, instead of the fact that your profile has no prompts and a bunch of fishing pictures or pictures holding a deer head up, and you have sunglasses and hat on in every single
one.
It's all group photos, and we don't know who the fuck you are in that. So yeah, kind of talk to me about, oh, that's too funny that men create profiles for men. I look at dating profiles as marketing. I have a very strong marketing background. And so it very much to what you talked about, I look at kind of my ideal client avatar, like who is the type of person, my target audience I'm trying to attract, which means it's a very specific type of person. I don't want to match with everyone. I don't know if you've ever had this when you were on the dating apps, but when you travel, especially on Bumble, and you leave your location on and you're on a layover, I would get 1,500 likes within that hour and a half layover. And it became a full-time job clearing those out. And it's like, I don't want to be the most easily consumable person on a dating app, which wasn't the case the first couple of years that I was using dating apps, because I thought, ooh, the more likes I get, because I would only respond to people who matched with me first.
Right.
It led me to less ideal dates. It led to attractive people who couldn't carry a conversation or who were egregiously mismatched with me values wise. When I started to shift my profile to be very unapologetically me and lead with the things that are qualities I value in myself, I found that not only the matches were better as far as even just being able to have a conversation and it moving towards a date, but also the dates were better. And yes, not always compatible, but people that I genuinely enjoyed my time with and could be more in my softer feminine, as opposed to I've got to carry the conversation and I've got to lead and I've got to, force us to kind of go on to a date rather than letting them almost pursue me. So what are some suggestions for, I guess, both men and women? Because I do have a lot of men that listen to the podcast, but first and foremost, let's talk about women in crafting a profile that is authentically them and the common insecurities you see when they're creating their profile that they try to hide.
First of all, pictures with only yourself. I mean, you said it about the guys, but the women do it too, right?
Yeah.
And you have to lead with yourself first. And as far as prompts go, again, you have to think about what you're trying to attract, not just attracting all males, just like you said, right? Yeah. So appealing to their sense of humor or trying to be the pick-me girl that, does the cool things that they are going to want, that they think men want, right, is not going to get you the man that you deserve. It's so much more important I love to have Easter eggs on my profile, right? So I want it to be nuanced enough, intelligent enough to attract an intelligent person, someone with a good sense of humor, but that isn't just relying on sarcasm all the time.
Yep.
And somebody that is capable of deeper thought, right? So I would ask particular questions or have comments that were more Easter eggs, typically leaning more towards the polyamorous side, because on some of the apps like Bumble, it just like wasn't an option to say it. And I didn't want to take up valuable space saying it. And I, at the time too, I didn't know that I necessarily needed it to be a polyamorous relationship.
Yeah.
Because I was very much open to any spectrum of relationship as long as it was the right one.
Yeah.
And but as far as just a first vet of questions that I always recommend women in particular do, one is like Bumble, for example. Whenever you have to reach out first, my initial prompt would always be, "Hi, so and so, it was great matching with you. I really enjoyed this about your profile. What was it that caught your attention about mine?"
Mm-hmm.
And if they said anything like, "Oh, you're just so pretty," or "Oh,
Yes,
you look
physical.
great in this picture," or whatever, it was an immediate unmatch. I didn't even entertain it.
Yep.
And then, yes, you have to get really comfortable swiping left on very attractive people.
Oh yeah.
Like if their profile isn't completely filled out, if it's not speaking to you on any sort of deeper level, go ahead and swipe left. It is not worth your time and energy to have a bad experience talking to a guy for 2 seconds before he turns it into some sort of physical
Yep.
innuendo, only to be like, why did I fall for this again?
Yeah, if
Right?
there's
Like I see,
sexting before you've ever met,
yes,
massive red flag. Massive.
I see too many women just continuing to allow that to happen because they're like, but he's so cute. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna
Yeah.
keep having this experience.
Yep.
So yeah, and I do think that the insecurities that women deal with, unfortunately, many might have been put in a position to rely on the apps as little ego boosts, right? They give
Validation.
that feedback to us, that immediate feedback of we are desirable, people do like us, they do think we're pretty.
Yeah.
And so when you're lonely and you're feeling that, there's a tendency to make mistakes when you're on the apps, right? And go ahead and match with someone that maybe you shouldn't be matching with,
Mm-hmm.
or entertain a conversation that you should really just be moving on from because you might just be at a low point, or frustrated from how your last date went, or whatever it may be. We all fall victim to it. Men do it too.
Yep.
We all want to feel like we are capable of being loved and like we are capable of being attractive to the type of people that we find attractive, right? We don't want to be attractive to just anybody. We want the attention of those that we want, for ourselves.
Love that. Yeah. So kind of talk to me about the common struggles you see with people who are getting out of out of a marriage and have been divorced and getting back into the dating world and navigating it. Cause I got catfished the first person I matched with. So I got a real deep dive into online dating after my divorce because I'd been with somebody for 14 years. So like I said, MySpace was still around when I met my ex-husband. And so kind of talk to me about how to learn an appropriate, healthy usage of dating apps that's different than either normal human behavior or what society is using it for, which is kind of like you said, that validation, that attention seeking.
Yeah. Well, I think of it, I hate to take some of the romance out of it, but I think of it more like a job hunt.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about our profile being like our personal resume, and is it built to get you a job at a fast food chain or at a Fortune 100 company?
Yeah.
What do you want? There's a big spectrum there of jobs you could get, if you're putting in the right amount of work to get those jobs, right? So the dating apps themselves, you have to approach it much the same way. Your intention has to be in line with the work that you're putting in. You can't just say, "Oh, I want to be in a relationship. I'm lonely. I wish dates weren't so bad," but then not proactively change anything about your swiping behavior, your app
Yeah.
behavior, and expect a different result. So many of us use it as just a default coping mechanism. And instead of using it for the true intention that we are hoping for, and it's often because we haven't done anything to heal ourselves
Yep.
first, right? So coming out of divorce, there's so much healing to be done. And a lot of that does have to be done on your own, and you have to find your own self-esteem again. So many people coming out of that phase of life really, really struggle with their confidence, their self-esteem, their sense of worth. Their, you know, they are so afraid to be themselves because they've only known each themselves as part of a unit with
Yeah.
someone else for so long, right? And so reestablishing who you are is such an important first step of starting to date again.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, where so many people think that they've done the work, and we have to recognize that it's always ongoing, of course. And that there's different stages, right? Some of it does have to be done on your own. Some of it actually needs to be done in the dating scene.
Hmm.
And other stages of it need to be done in the next relationship. You won't be tested in the right way. You won't have triggers come up the same way. You won't have these experiences to have to navigate together and know how healed you really are until you've gotten yourself into another relationship.
Yeah.
So the healing is ongoing, but we do have to look at ourselves first and get comfortable by ourselves.
Hmm.
That was really what did it for me. I started traveling alone. I took myself out on dates every single time I had an adult weekend. I didn't have a lot of free time. I had my kiddo about 70% of the time because his dad is out of state. So I got 2 weekends a month for my adult weekends, and I would cram dates into those, which is why I had to really vet those dates so hard.
Yeah.
To know that they were going to be good quality dates. I wasn't going to get stood up. I wasn't going to have a bad night. And then I would always save one of those nights for myself. I would go post up at a quiet restaurant or bar and bring one of my books, and I would just read. And I would read and have a couple cocktails. And if people wanted to talk to me, usually about whatever I was reading, which I always got a kick out of telling them, oh, yeah, fantasy smut.
I
um,
was like self-improvement, like Brene Brown. Okay, let's talk about
no,
it.
no, no. I'm reading the smuttiest things at the bar.
I love that.
And it was always the women that were the most intrigued.
Right?
Um,
Don't
but
gatekeep, sis. I love it.
oh, it's a rabbit hole for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be my date nights. And the first time I started taking myself out to dinner alone, or the first time traveling alone, was terrifying.
Hmm.
And then it soon became one of my absolute favorite things. And then when you are comfortable by yourself, and when you relish the experience of being on your own too, and can recognize how strong you are on your own, particularly traveling abroad where you're being, thrust into a new country that you have to figure out all by yourself. You don't have plans. Um, you don't have anyone else to just keep you company down the streets of
Yeah.
Spain at night. Um, you gain a confidence that is really hard to replicate without spending that time on your own first. So then you come back to the dating world and you're like, I don't need to put up with this.
Yeah.
I don't need to be put up with being treated this way. I know how I want to be treated. I need to enjoy my dates with people at least as much as I enjoy my dates that I take myself on. And
Yeah.
you better be taking me somewhere just as nice as where I take myself. It changed how I approach dating. It made me slow it down. I wasn't as reliant on, um, you know, the apps for that sense of worth.
Hmm.
Um, and then the healing just kind of kept snowballing from there. And I've seen that with a lot of my clients too, is like, it's just this metamorphosis that you have to go through post divorce. Everybody gets there different ways. That was my particular path, but I've seen everyone kind of take different paths for that same metamorphosis. And it's beautiful. It really can be. And the ones that fight against that are the ones that get stuck, the ones that really struggle to find any sense of joy in that next stage of life, when it really can be a new lease on life. When you take advantage of it, you
Yeah,
can't change it, that the relationship is over, like you have to do something about it.
well, it's like changing your identity, which I think a lot of people struggle with. Like you said, they're so used to being one version of themselves. And I had a very similar kind of path out of my divorce. Was I started taking myself on dates. There was one restaurant where I felt comfortable sitting at the bar being by myself, and I started there. I'd have 2 glasses of champagne, and then I'd have to sit there for an hour, make sure I was good enough to drive. But that was my kind of routine. And that was actually the first date I went on, was with the bartender at that restaurant,
Oh,
because I was practicing like confidence. I was so wrecked with my self-worth coming out of my marriage that I didn't even recognize I wasn't making eye contact with men. I remember in a breathwork session, I was like, I can make eye contact. What a concept. And so I was practicing that with the bartender, and I even was starting to like flirt, and I was like, who am I? Like, it was such a
yeah.
foreign experience for me, even though when I was in my early 20s, hi Kitty, I was great. Like, I was super confident, but had lost all of that in my marriage. And then I remember he just kind of kept coming back and like having conversations with me, and maybe he was being a nice bartender. That's fine. But at one point I was like, you don't have to keep coming back here before you ask for my number. And I was like, oh, look at me. And so he ripped off a piece of paper, and I gave him my number, and we went on a first date, and it was awful. The next date I went on was a guy I was with for 6 months, and it was, no offense to him, he was a great guy, but he was the first person who was willing to date me and go out with me more than once. And I clung to that.
Yeah.
And a lot was learned through that. But I think that that's been the biggest thing that I work through with clients, is that relationships, dating, it is all a mirror for you on the things that you need to work on. And when we take this victim mindset of like, oh, it's the dating apps, or oh, it's the dismissive avoidance, or oh, it's the narcissist, or whatever label they want to put on it, you're not recognizing your choice in allowing those people to have access to you. And if it keeps happening, you're the common denominator of the pattern that you keep experiencing. So start to look at why you keep making choices, or what you're drawn to in these types that you keep having repeated cycles with. That's how you get your power back, when you can recognize, oh, it's my choice of, I love it when somebody love bombs me, or I only go for attractive people and I don't wait for them to, fill out their profile prompts, or, whatever choices you're making, whatever you're drawn to is why you keep having these patterns. So kind of talk to me
Precisely.
about how to start to develop self-worth and self-confidence. Like, what would be like the very first thing? Let's say your divorce is finalized. You've spent, I don't know, we'll just make up 6 months doing your own thing, eat, pray, love kind of situation. And now you're ready to start dating. How can you stay grounded in yourself and not get caught up in the need for validation, the entertainment that dating apps can be used for, and the having those standards for yourself when you're just starting to get back into it?
I think the important thing to start with then is to make sure you're still reserving time for just you.
Yeah.
If you are going out on the apps, or if you're going out on dates and you're going to be on the apps, one day a week is still just for you. One day a week, you're not on the apps at all. You are going out with your friends. If you don't have friends, you need to make friends, right? A lot of our self-worth can come from our friends and our sense of community around us, our hype people, right? We need to have powerful people in our purview that keep us grounded in our own worth, for our weakest moments. Granted, we don't want to have to rely on that. It needs to come from us, but we all have weak moments, and we all need that friend or that friend group that is going to say, no, he's bad for you, or she's bad for you. Like, why are you accepting this? You're better than this. And for me, I found a group post-divorce that was actually, I found it on TikTok. It was spawned from there, and it was a reading group, and we all liked fantasy smut. And we all started to get together, and it was this wonderful group of women, and it was very empowering. And we did all sorts of events together and all that. But it was so wonderful to find a whole new set of friends in adulthood.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know that it could be that easy.
Mm.
But those women helped me so much in my dating journey, particularly the early stages of it, to identify when I'd be getting hooked in on somebody that maybe I wasn't seeing the whole picture.
Yep.
Because similar post divorce, it wasn't very long until I found myself in a 9-month relationship. And it wasn't necessarily a bad one. It was a great relationship. I knew it wasn't going to be forever.
Mm-hmm.
And, um, but when that ended, and I'm the one who ended it because I knew it wasn't going to be forever. Um, but when that ended, for the longest time, I only would match with people that looked like that person.
Mm.
I couldn't find myself physically attracted to anyone else. And so I was ignoring all the red flags, right? My app behavior just fell off a cliff because I was trying to recreate that good relationship. And that was a fool's errand, right? It wasn't going to happen. And so it wasn't until I finally recognized myself. Well, actually, it was a friend that pointed out, like, all these guys you've been matching with lately all seem to look like this other guy you dated. And I'm like, oh yeah, probably
Dang it.
probably doing that. But uh, then I had to force myself. So when we talk about our app behavior, like the reason our dating experience is so bad often is because of our own choices, right? We are the ones choosing to put ourselves in these situations over and over and over again. And so when I did recognize that I was doing that, I said, okay, my strategy has to change. I have to make myself, even if I don't necessarily want to, or if I can't see the value in it right now, I need to go the opposite direction. I need to only swipe on people that do not look like this. And I need to swipe on people that I'm not sure if I find attractive. I need to swipe on people that have nothing in common with this other person. And lo and behold, I found my ability to be attracted to other people again.
Yeah.
This was no longer my mandatory type. And so many people get caught up in their types and what they think that they want, even though they know that it's bad for them. And they're convinced that they just can't ever feel it with anyone that's not that type. And I don't think that's true. I think when we're open to it and we put ourselves in the position to be receptive to things outside of our normal desires and wants, we can find attraction, whether that's intellectual, emotional, physical, or otherwise spiritual. We can find that level of attraction elsewhere. We just have to be willing to give people the chance, and we have to be able to show up looking for that attraction, being open to receive that attraction. Because again, if we're showing up pessimistic, we're shutting everything down from the get-go, whether it's on the giving or the receiving side, and we may not even notice it, right? Yeah. If we go into a date saying, I'm not going to find this guy attractive, guess what? You're not going to find him attractive.
Brain does this amazing thing to identify evidence that matches your beliefs. So like you said, even just with the energy behind dating, if you're going in thinking it's going to be a bad date, guess what? You're right.
Yep. You're always going to be right.
Yep. Yep. Love it. Well, talk to me about polyamory, because that's not something that I've even looked into. I know there's probably a lot of misconceptions about it. How do you typically educate people or introduce them to what polyamory truly is?
Well, first of all, I tend to think, I make an overgeneralization that a lot of people equate polyamory with like swinging, which is totally very, very different things. Swinging is a purely, sexual nature. experience, maybe not purely, but it's rooted in that, right?
A hall pass, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then polyamory is truly about love and connection, and our ability to connect with more than one person in our lives at a time, and be fulfilled and love everybody, love those partners or those connections equally but differently. And this goes to post-divorce. I really had to accept the fact that one person, it's not fair to expect one person to be 100% of what we may need throughout our lives, 100% of the time and over time, because we change so much as individuals throughout our lives that you have to have something truly, truly special to have a person that is going to grow with you in the exact same ways and needs and desires and paths along the way. That it's why I think so many marriages tend to fail nowadays, is because we get married young, we start a family, we start a career, we go through these most stressful periods of life, and then we finally start to be able to breathe again, but we feel like we're being held back by a partner that is, has been seen as like, you've been here for all this stress, so you must be partly responsible for it. I think I could be happier elsewhere. And it's not necessarily the case. You might still have so much love for that person. But you're lacking fulfillment in your life from other things because you've had to go through so much sacrifice in that time. Sacrifice of becoming a parent, or putting your job first, and then sacrificing friendships and other relationships in your life, or other goals that you might have, like traveling or starting a new hobby. Things get put on the back burner relentlessly, kind of in your 20s and 30s, because you either can't afford to do it, or you don't have the time to do it, or you have to put kids first. Everybody else comes first but you, right? Yeah. You make it into your late 30s, your early 40s. We're at that stage of life. We're a little more established. If you have children, maybe they're starting to get a little older. Things are getting a little easier. And it's like you finally get this permission to start to think about yourself again.
Yeah.
And that shift, I completely lost where I was going.
I mean, it was all great.
I was like, well,
polyamory,
like polyamory,
as opposed to what is perceived to be.
Yes, I got off topic. Okay. But that shift, when you can get selfish again, and you can say, look, there are things in my life that are important to me. And I have all these other connections in life, right? I might have work associates, I might have friends, I might have relatives that I all love and that add to my life in different ways. And polyamorous relationships are often like that. Not all polyamorous relationships are even physical. Some of them are not necessarily even romantic. They are deep connections that are formed somehow. And a lot of polyamorous people may not even identify as heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual at all, right? They might be asexual, or just queer, or demisexual, sapiosexual, right? There's the full spectrum. And those types of people, generally connections are harder for them to find. So when they get them, they want to hold on to them. And if they get it again, it's like, oh my God, lightning struck twice. Like I need both of these things, but they're totally different relationships. Yeah. Right. And so what I found, I had met a man in my dating journey that was polyamorous, and he and I really connected strongly. He lived in Colorado. And so we talked and we became friends. We sort of dated, but like he was poly and I kind of didn't understand that at the time. And he started kind of just teaching me more and more about it. And the more I learned, the more it just made sense. And the more I realized that that was kind of the approach I had been taking to a lot of my dating anyway, was that a lot of times when I am particularly dating abroad, I'd go and I had the best luck dating abroad. Um, it was more like every time I went abroad, it was like Mamma Mia, right? Uh, like I have my summer romance that I'm still connected to a couple. There was an Italian man and a Croatian man
We're talking about
that really stand out amongst the crowd. That I had so much love for them so fairly instantly. And again, it was a connection that didn't didn't end after I left, although it's not like we were trying to maintain a long distance relationship or I was trying to, get them to come over here or me over there or anything like that. But they became these sort of satellite relationships, which is a term in polyamory, where, when you're with each other in time and space, it's like you're meant to be together. You're comets. Yeah, they're comets. So they come around and you're with them for that time as they're passing, like a satellite, and then they go back out to wherever they're from. And it's not like anything has to end. It's just you pick right off where you left. You pick right up where you left off. And that's what I had been doing. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's a polyamorous thing because I was feeling really bad that, I would still be thinking about so and so or, have feelings for so and so, but I'm, also developing a totally different connection over here at home, still dating. But it wasn't necessarily just about dating multiple people at a time. It was that they each added something uniquely different to my life.
kind of like you're just accepting how you feel rather
Yeah,
than shaming it.
exactly. And so that's when I started to really identify as solo poly, just meaning that I was by myself. I didn't have any true partners at the time. Didn't have a primary partner, although I was looking for one. So in polyamory, there's kind of a couple of different sects of polyamory where you have hierarchical and non-hierarchical. Um, a lot of people don't believe that hierarchical is true polyamory because it should be about like loving freely. Um, I personally don't see anything wrong with having primary partners. Our life is just structured that way to where if you decide you want to nest with a partner and you're building a family or you share a home, you're naturally going to spend more time with them. You might have to split finances with them. You might have to, coordinate with them more. So naturally, a little bit of a hierarchy is established. Those that practice non-hierarchical polyamory tend to not assign priority to any partnership one over another. I personally had a hard time with that, even though I recognize how it's possible. It's just personally like when I am falling madly and deeply in love with someone, they're naturally going to want or naturally going to get more of my time and attention and energy, right? And this connection over here may be very, very strong and very different, but it may not be that same kind of in love feeling. I may love that person and want them in my life and need them as part of fulfillment for my life. And I may hopefully add fulfillment to their life. So of course I want that relationship to still exist and I want to nurture it, but I'm naturally going to want to put more of my energy into this stronger connection over here. So I still believe that there are stronger connections than others.
Yeah.
So I think it's really hard to not do hierarchical polyamory, and then a lot of people, the poly purists would say that I'm not really polyamorous because we're not in an
Poly
open
purist.
relation. Yeah. Polypurity is definitely a thing. But yeah, because we are a closed triad, we started open. I was dating. I was still technically looking for my primary partner when I met my partners, Will and Paige, and they were seeing other women, but they were already married and had been married for 8 years. Um, and, eventually we just got to a point where we were like, it doesn't feel right seeing anybody else. Like I just want to see you, and it's not fair to the other people. It's not fair to me. And we just wanted to see each other. So um, we we chose to have a monogamous approach to our triad because that's what works best for us, at least right now. And then we've always said that if anything ever changes and one of us feels like we are not feeling fulfilled, or that we do need another connection, or if we were to meet another connection, it's a conversation that we have. That's one thing that became very, very important to me about my post-divorce is my ex-husband did not have conversations with me that ever led me to believe he was at all unhappy. Getting divorced was not my choice. I wasn't even given a say in it. And that felt like kind of the ultimate form of disrespect, and betrayal of not being trusted enough with a hard conversation. Because I would have been open to any other number of alternatives to try to save our marriage, because at the time I really thought I was married to my best friend. And I thought we had a great thing. I probably would have stayed married to him forever, because my view on marriage then was it's a lifelong commitment. And like that hasn't necessarily changed. It's just I look at relationships as a whole a little differently now. I think we all have to be a little more flexible in knowing that it really is hard, and it's not fair, again, to be that 100% need, having 100% of your needs met by just one person 100% of the time over time. That's impossible for just about anybody to do. At some point, you're going to be unhappy. And at some point, somebody else could make you happy. And if you really love someone, wouldn't you want that partner to be happy in those moments where you're not capable of giving them that joy? You're not capable of giving them the love that they might need in that moment. And that's where compersion comes in with polyamory. Is one of my favorite words and favorite things to experience is just seeing the joy, or experiencing the joy of seeing the person that you love experience joy, even if that joy is not coming from you. You aren't the source of it. But loving them enough to give them access to finding that joy in other means, obviously within boundaries and within things that have been discussed. It's not this free for all. It's based in hard conversations that you've had about like what's okay and like how are we going to approach this? And people come up with their own rules and their own guidelines and their own veto powers. And it's really I think a more evolved way to look at relationships in order to see them last. And I've seen them last a very, very long time when given this sort of flexibility to let the relationship breathe as it needs to.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, just even when we talked about the dating stuff, is that it's rooted in trust, and first trust with yourself and understanding and knowing yourself and what your needs are, and then being able to communicate them with your partner or partners and have that trust there to have the conversation, have the boundaries, and then act accordingly so that trust is maintained. Because without trust in any relationship, dating or otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tell people where they can learn more about you, they can find you, they can connect with you. Give us all the deets.
Yes. Well, my website is revdating.com. You can book a free consult directly on there. You can email me at cam@revdating.com. And of course, on Instagram, I'm at relish.every.vibe.
Awesome. We'll link all that up in the show notes. Cam, thank you so much for engaging with the content on there. That's how I kind of became aware of you, and for taking the time today to come on and chat with us about dating. Whew, it's
of course
not as much as
my pleasure, Tara.
All right,
right?
We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Unblock Your BS podcast. I hope you found this conversation as powerful and inspiring as I did. Before we wrap up, I want to extend an invitation to you. Yes, you. If you have a story to share about your own healing journey, insights on self-awareness or healing, or if you're navigating the path of personal growth and would love to explore it further, I'd love to have you as a guest on one of the future episodes. This space is all about having real, meaningful, and honest conversations, whether it's diving into a breakthrough you've had, exploring a topic that's close to your heart, or even joining me for live coaching. It's all about unblocking the belief systems and stories that might be holding you back and finding ways to fully step into your most authentic self. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, reach out to me. You can head on over to unblockyourbs.com/podcast. I'll link that up in the show notes if you want to apply to be on the show, if you want to join me for some live coaching because you really need the support and the insight. And then, hey, don't forget to share this episode with someone who might need it. Leave a review if you're loving the podcast. Tell me your favorite parts. Tell me what you want to hear. And until next time, keep unblocking your BS and creating the life you deserve. Have a good one.